Yes, indeed. We're back again with Brother Neil Frazier, aka Metamorphosis, for our show today. Critical race theory, alpha schools, AI, and future of education. That's a deep one, and we're going to get right into it. But I want to say once again, the body of work that you're building, brother, it's a heck of a ride, and I'm glad to be here with you down through the years. I appreciate your energy and your fortitude and your stick-to-itiveness, and I'm gonna be right here by your side. Look, if you're Batman, I'm Robin, so I got you.
Well, Scurvversity is definitely growing. It's one of the best universities on the planet. So thank you, brother. Always it's always good to be with you and the family on Monday. And you talk about a body of work, man. Your work stretches back 25 years, huh?
Yeah, yes, it's wild. It's wild to
Yeah,
think. But they say every journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. And so I never think
true.
about that. You
Yeah.
just like a fighter's mentality. You don't
Hmm.
get caught up in what might happen. You just keep throwing punches. You don't worry about what your
Yeah,
opponent's going to do. You make him worry about what you're going to do because you're thinking about what you're going to do. You have your defense, but you think about what you're going to do. You see what I
that's
mean?
absolutely
And
right.
even when they took the other channel down that had almost 6,000 videos the next day, I was going on to
Wow.
do other shows and other things. And
Yeah.
look, we're up what near 3,000 videos. Some from the past, so all of them
Yeah.
present, and we're gonna keep on going. And now
Oh,
we're
yeah.
more airtight. And
Yeah.
I want to make the announcement that LanceScurv.com brings you to LanceScurvX. Or if you type in LanceScurvX or LanceScurv.com, both of them bring you to the same site. It was updated this morning, and we have another surprise coming soon. But I just wanted to say that. But go ahead, brother.
Yeah. No, actually, that's a good thing because as we were talking, you're getting in the ring with people from other, cultures, and that's really what it's all about.
Hmm.
Because one-sided arguments or positions can't produce when you have both people in the ring, then it can produce what the outcome is going to be. So this is a hot button topic today. As I was telling you, I was intrigued by the alpha schools because what we don't realize is we are so caught up into the things they upload, and a lot of times you can't run away from it. But at the same time, we know that that's also a shield for something that they're doing behind the scenes.
Yes.
And I was surprised to find out that these alpha schools have actually been in existence since 2014. So we're talking about a long time. And
Yes.
when you think about the class at 1% of children that they're educating, we're going to take a deep dive look into the system and see why this is such a hot button issue for them when it comes to critical race theory, because they both are going to intersect at some point. And as we go into the visuals today, we'll
Hmm.
see how this is going to be a very complex issue for educating Black children.
Right.
Well, not just Black children, but brown children too, and
Mhm.
all those who have been locked out of the educational system in terms of real knowledge that they use to run the feudalism system. So, brother, if you want to start out with your banner, man, great banner today. I just want to greet the family, say hello
Right.
to everyone. Uh, yeah, you're gonna have to talk to us about that. That's
Well, the concept of what I came up with, since they're trying to erase Black African history and culture,
uh-huh.
and they don't want to deal with slavery. But the thing is that our culture and our history goes far beyond slavery, and
Absolutely.
humanity in the world would not be what it is today, not with just our contributions. That word seems so weak to me. Like,
Hmm.
it's like you all get up to go to a restaurant, and other people are paying more, but you just contribute a little bit. No, no, it's the main course,
Right.
right? And they're
Right.
trying to erase that because if the youth coming up in the future don't have any indication of who we are
Mm-hmm.
as the original and the most powerful on the planet who pretty much provided everything, then
Mm-hmm.
their esteem goes down, and then whatever else happens as they want it to happen. But in
Yeah.
this illustration, I wanted to have a blackboard and a Caucasian teacher erasing
Mm.
the blackboard and African history. And I purposely had the typo in African so people can notice it more.
Oh
Sometimes
yeah. Yeah.
you have to put a wrinkle in something for them to
Yeah.
say, hey, So you see the robot representing AI and maybe a programmed AI that
Mm-hmm.
wants to erase it also. But AI has to bring the facts, and the Caucasian teacher erasing it, so there's no indication of us for the next class.
Right.
And behind the robot, you see a garbage can with several African masks and some kente cloth, and they're dumping it because they don't want any indication of our culture. And they don't want the young children who are sitting there to have any knowledge of that. So they're going to erase it right in front of our very eyes and
Wow.
replace it with something watered down. And we won't have any pride or no knowledge of who we are. It's just the same way when I was coming up in elementary school.
Yeah.
And basically, they started out our history with slavery. They
Oh
talked about
yeah.
all the other explorers and inventors and
Yeah.
everything. But all of a sudden, we came to light when it was a slave ship coming in. So
Right.
the
Right.
white kids would laugh, not outright in front of the teacher, but they chuckle, and they would try to say that we're slaves and, you don't know who you are. And that's all you are, slaves. That's all you could be. I mean, yeah, back in elementary school, I busted up a couple of them when nobody was looking, you know what I mean? But yeah, but I was taught different at home, and I would bring things up that they didn't have in the curriculum, and some of the Jewish teachers, which was nothing but Jewish teachers in the school. And I
Mm-hmm.
just say this part, they were the watchmen, even though most of the Jewish teachers were women, looking
Right.
over the horizon to see. It's just like when you have freshly cut grass, and a week later you look at your lawn and one or two blades of grass are popping up, meaning
Right.
they're looking for the next leader. They're looking for the next person who may not know they're a leader yet, but they have the qualities of a leader, and they have
Mm-hmm.
to smash their spirit and stop them from growing in that trajectory that they can see. Oh, here comes another Malcolm. Here comes another this, another that. We got to stop.
Right.
That's their role. And I knew that for a long time ago because we butted heads. Mrs. Finkelstein, Mrs.
Oh
Rubinow,
wow.
Miss Lutz,
You remember the
Miss
names?
Crispin. I can tell you, man, what?
Wow.
Yeah, I remember. Miss Druchelle. Yeah, all of them. Yep.
That's deep.
And they didn't like the fact that my mother is an educated mother. My father, he had his own
I
business.
bet they
But
didn't.
when she spoke, you had to listen. Plus, she has an
Right.
operatic background. So they were
Yeah.
like spellbound at her. And she
Oh
had some
yeah.
clashes. She didn't come up in a confrontational way, but she stood her ground, very intellectual, and proved her point, and they couldn't dispute it.
Wisdom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they knew they left me alone. I mean, I learned
Mm-hmm.
and I learned beyond, but they left me alone. They
Oh
knew
yeah.
what I was going to be in my spirit. You know what I
They
mean?
they absolutely knew and identified you.
Yep.
And look at the intensity on the kids, the way they looking at the board.
You can see
you
it from behind. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can almost feel the intensity.
Like, what are they doing? Right.
What are they doing? Why are they doing it?
Exactly.
Why are you erasing something that's on the board? Why did you even write it there in the first place if you're going to erase it? They have gotten into a state of confusion so bad that it's confusing themselves.
Exactly.
And then you look at the mask of history, and I love that, and the garbage can.
Mm-hmm.
That I love that, because it's just like when you say you have somebody coming over, certain things you want to hide in the corner. You don't want them to see. You put it in the corner, might put it in a little box or something.
Right. Right.
But being in the trash can is that tells the whole story there, because trash is meant to be thrown out.
Exactly. That's the point.
Wow.
That's right.
That's a good one, brother. Well, you know, as we get into this topic today, again, we can no longer skirt around these topics because we see a system that we were indoctrinated to function in. And we'll see, it goes all the way back to how Rockefeller first envisioned having the educational system or the school system as a great place to indoctrinate workers. In fact, he said, I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers. And as we go back, we'll look at this concept and why critical race theory, why it's opposed by those in power who understand this. So, my brother, if we want to start out with the feudalism system, we want to set up a situation where we look at, because you're always going to have structures in a society. It's not, yes, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't get away from structures. So no matter what you want to call the socio-economic system we're in, there's a structure in place. And you know, you hear different people when they talk about, well, what is the social structure in America? Or what is the governmental structure that actually dictates to the people of that nation how they are supposed to behave? And it's based on class warfare. You can go back in history and you look at this global skin color caste system that has been set up all across the globe. Well, it actually goes hand in hand at what we're looking at today. And in this system, it goes back to Europe, which America was established on these same societal structures. So you look at the king, and the king controlled all of the land. Okay. And that's very important because you can look at that king as the 1%. Okay. But right underneath these people, you have this class known as the barons or the nobles or the lords. You can think of the multinational corporations, and you can think of people who, the wealthy people who basically invest in these different, at this class level to continue for this structure to be in place. The next level you'll see, and we're going to see the correlation with this and what we're discussing today as we go down. But that next level, the knights, they are paid by the lords, the multinational corporations, what have you. They are paid to manage this system. So you have, you know, the military, all of our different institutions, the educational institutions, the religious institutions, all of that is underneath the class or comprises the class of knights. Okay, and we're going to see how that was established in the beginning for the educational system as well, and how they're, well, not trying, they have gone back to that because that is something that has always worked for them. And then you see, well, now you have a large percentage of Americans are in this particular class, the peasants and the serfs. And the peasants and the serfs basically are the workers or the primary laborers. And so they are rewarded by the Knights from, you know, basically allowing them to rent, or some of them own, you know, homes. But primarily it's to work as a labor class to produce everything in that society for those who are at the higher echelon of that society. So as we look in, thank you, brother. As we look into education, one of the things that we want to talk about is, we want to start out talking about the critical race theory. And the reason why we want to start out talking about that is because, Lance, I have a picture of you. You'll see it's like black and white, where it breaks down the institutions, the ideas.
Let me see here. That's not it.
That's not it. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, I think this is it.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Okay. So as we go into critical race theory, one of the reasons why this has created such an uproar, and now is the time to revisit it, because other cultures or the primary culture in America, or the dominant culture, they are experiencing the same things that we have always experienced. So now this becomes more, they become more aware of the actual experiences that we deal with this system. But yeah, so critical race theory, originally what happened was Germany, or back during this time, they were called Prussia. They got into a war with Napoleon, and they lost miserably. So as a result, they said, well, our soldiers need to be trained better. And so they actually came up with this compulsory education system that was mandatory, where the top 1% were sent to elite schools. And this is how we're going to tie this into the alpha schools today, that many of our people are not paying attention to. One of the reasons is these schools were very, very expensive, between $55,000 to $75,000 a year, just more than most universities. And then again, it was this class that's going to be the barons or the nobles, okay, or the lords that they're training, okay. And then the top 5% were taught to be managers or knights. And that's why I explained that to you in the beginning, so we can see where this originated from. But again, we have to comprehend this, the fact that American structural culture is just a mirror of Germany. Okay, this is something that we have to comprehend, because that's when you go back and you look at these systems, this is where the modern day aspect of it began. I mean, it goes all the way back to the Greeks, who are, we know that the Greeks, we have the documents of history that they were educated in Kemet. They'll tell you that themselves. Aristotle, Plato, they'll tell you that themselves. The point is that is the foundation of American academia. Okay. And as we move into modern day times, this academic training, this concept came out of ancient Prussia, which is modern day Germany. Now, the other 94% were sent to what they call the, I don't want to mess this word up, Volksschule, which is basically the people's school or public school as it evolved. Okay. And so the person that is thought of as the father of American education, Horace Mann, actually went there to Prussia and studied this concept and brought it back to America. And the whole idea was that what is the purpose of education? Okay, is to educate people to function in these institutions, mainly for profit. Okay, so we educate our children for the purposes of basically filling in the spots in these institutions, okay, that are necessary in order to keep them functioning. But as we see this hierarchy, then we know that there's some type of structural design that will always separate the classes in America based on their economic status. So critical race theory is an academic and legal framework that originated in the 1970s and 1980s, primarily developed by legal scholars to examine how systemic racism is embedded in legal systems and societal structures. White people have an adverse reaction to this model of academic instruction. So I want to address something here while we have this visual up here. Is that inside these social structures, mainly, okay, they start out with ideas because let's look at it. Okay, we have a brain, we have thoughts, and it's really crazy to think that people want to suppress your thoughts because they can't deal with the reality of what is manifested from this. So when you look at ideas, you look at what is good, what is moral, what pertains to your self-value and self-worth, and what's the most powerful energy you have to move something forward. This is what, so the whole thing is, the whole issue is here. Are we training people to be complex thinkers, or are we still training people like we did 200 years ago to be just to serve the system in whatever capacity that is needed? Okay, and that's very important because the concept of ideas also lets us know that the creator actually has a built-in moral and ethical code in nature. Okay, we know this. We know this because of the law of cause and effect and many other laws. But when you look at the institutions like government, schools, which we're talking about schools today, but they all go hand in hand. You look at media, you look at prisons, and you look at markets. Now, all of these are intertwined. And as you can see how the graph is intertwining them, but interconnecting them. But the real issue is when you have people segregating people based on these different levels in the feudalism system. If you're a lord, if you're a knight, or if you're thought of as a peasant or a serf. Okay, but all of these issues or ideas are still a part of institutions because you have human beings that function in these systems. And that's one of the reasons why they have introduced AI to the point where, and again, everything has its positive and everything has its negative. but primarily focusing on schools and the direction that the Department of Education is going, okay, then we can see where we're going to run into a real serious issue if we don't confront this issue of critical race theory. Then you look at the interactions. How will people interact? How will our children interact to build a positive society with each other, with groups, with the norms in a society, with artifacts, in other words, with tangible things that we see, like the mask you put in the trash can. What are you going to do with the artifacts of history? What are you going to do with the documents of history? And then we come down to the individual where everything begins, right? So are you telling people that they are not supposed to have thoughts, feelings, positive mindsets, or built-in biases in their behaviors? So all of these issues that we're looking at right here, or all of these factors that we're looking at, are a part of this critical race theory that we have to confront. And as always, it's turned into some type of negative connotation, like, or this is Marxism, or this is liberalism, or this is leftism, or whatever the hell these. No, it's the, remember, we're talking about the same bird with two different wings, where you have one wing that is diametrically opposed to the other one, and they're two extremes. And so the people that are on the other side of this, they are mainly comprised of the lords and barons class. Okay, brother. I want to go into that first picture you had up there with the different aspects of institutions, and yeah, that's it. So one of the things that is being ignored is that you can call this whatever you want to, but all of these factors within our society, they're still there. You can ignore them, but it's still going to have an effect on how people function in a society. Who is responsible for the concepts that we value? What makes a person inferior? Is it their status? What about education? Are you being taught to worship authority, or the dogma that we know that exists in not just in education, but in religion as well? How about disagreements? How are we going to handle disagreements? Right now, we know how that's handled when someone disagrees with you, how we've been taught to act. How about the system analysis? Who's analyzing the educational system, and what is the goal of this analysis? Is it to make sure that we have a stronger society where people are dealing with complex issues, or is it just to continue this age-old bullying? You know, that is worn out. Okay, that's not going to produce anything but what it does, hate. What about power and social issues? What about the tension that's created when you divide people on segregation, or the illustrations you use when you label people? What about discrimination, prejudice? And more importantly, what about confronting the diversity issue? And which is, you know, one of the things that's really crazy about when you look at the individuals who are trying to establish this type of white nationalism, is that they overlook the fact that these institutions are going to have problems, And the problems are going to have to be solved by the people that are running these institutions. Okay, unless you're going to have AI running everything. What about inequity? So all of these issues are important for us to look at. You can't just isolate people economically and say, well, you know, we're fine. The stock market is doing good. You know, when every time you go outside, all you see is tents and people out in the streets. So, okay, brother.
Okay.
I want to, if you put one more picture up there with dealing with, oh, I know the one with the black girl and the white kid, I think it is.
Is this? Let me see.
It's, yeah, keep going.
Okay, I think this one
Yep,
is it.
that's it. Yep, thank you.
They're
Okay,
so tiny on the screen. That's why I had
I
to
know,
squint on the
I
side
know.
panel, like the size of
Yeah.
a penny.
Oh, really? It's that small?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
For me to click onto them, I have them all lined up.
Okay. Now let's talk about something. Now this is, and I gave this definition earlier. You guys can read it again, but I basically want to have this here as we go down the origin of education in America, and we deal with this issue that at some point is going to have to be dealt with. You know, you can't possibly, if you have children going to school every day, what are they going to be taught?
Mm-hmm.
What is the goal of them going to school, since now the labor force is pretty much wiped out? So let's start out with Horace Mann, who is considered the father of modern day education. And he quoted the term that education is the great equalizer. Known as the father of American education and the father of American public school system, common school movement in the 19th century to establish free, universal, non-sectarian education funded by taxes. As the first Massachusetts Secretary of Education, he revolutionized schooling by championing teacher training or normal schools, mandatory attendance, and modernized structured curricula. So when he visited Germany, he got this system, okay, that we know today is the public school system. He got that system from there, and he saw it as an opportunity to educate people in order to fulfill the needs of the society, like the institutions that we talked about. Mm-hmm. But what's his name? John D. Rockefeller, who actually was the one behind the financing of the modern day public school system. I believe it was called General Education Board, that he poured what would be equivalent to a couple of $2 billion into this, because he saw opportunity to indoctrinize the workers. And he saw an opportunity to have children growing up almost like a breeding farm, but that these children will not only be taught instructions to understand things, but they also will be kind of indoctrinated in terms of, you know, when you go to school, you got to raise your hand. Well, back in the day, to ask a question, or they have to ride on a school bus, you know, as sort of like a cavalry, and everything is structured. So they saw that as being good in order for children in America to learn how to work in these systems. Now, the person who is responsible for this particular concept, the critical race theory, is a brilliant brother, Dr. Derek Bell, Dr. Derek Bell Jr., and he was an American lawyer and legal scholar and civil rights activist. And in fact, he was the first tenured Black professor at Harvard Law School. He worked for the U.S. Department of Justice, then the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, just like Howard Thurman, where he supervised over 300 school desegregation cases in Mississippi. Widely considered the father of CRT, a Harvard Law professor, he developed the framework in the 1970s and 80s, arguing that racism is systemic and permanent in American society rather than just an aberration. And as I said, he was the first tenured Black professor at Harvard Law School. But this is important because, as you see the definition here, critical race theory is a theoretical framework and intellectual movement that seeks to understand and challenge the ways in which race and racist racial inequality shapes societal structures and individual experiences. Emerging in the 1970s and 80s, CRT is centered on the idea that racism is not just an individual bias or prejudice, but a systemic and structural issue ingrained in American society. And so finally, we see the modern day conflict that exists. And it was actually this guy named Christopher Rufo, however you want to pronounce it. He's a conservative activist who invented the conflict over critical race theory. So he challenged Dr. Bell's theory, and this is why this whole concept of not wanting white children to be educated about real American history because it'll make them feel guilty. This is where this actually came from. Known for mobilizing conservatives against diversity training and school curricula, conservative Republican widely oppose CRT, viewing it as divisive, un-American, an ideology that promotes racial essentialism, guilt, and anti-white bias. And he argued that it replaces individual and individual merit with group identity. So in other words, by virtue of the white kids being a part of a group, then it takes away their identity and it groups them into, all cultures have done that way, particularly Black people. It teaches children, or asserting that it teaches children, or white children, to hate their country and each other. And consequently, many GOP-led states have passed bans prohibiting its instruction in schools. Okay, brother. So this is where this whole conflict originated, okay? And this is why we have this issue. And so as we go into the alpha schools, we're going to see how this is going to have a serious conflict with critical race theory. Okay, this is where this conflict is going to really escalate.
Mm-hmm.
So, brother, if you want to start with that first visual where the robot is actually teaching the class. Now, as I was telling you, Lance, I found out, not that one, the first one.
Okay, let me see.
We'll come back to that one. Yeah. Yes. Now, I found out, so it says an artificial intelligence school with no traditional teachers is set to open in Chicago this fall. Alpha School. So when I first saw this, I was like, wow, this is really happening. I'm thinking they're talking about 2026, right?
Yep.
So I go back and research a little bit of it. This was in 2014.
Wow.
Yes. So they are already training this noble baron class that is now going to rule over this new society that they're creating. That's why they are using all these terms to try to lower your self-esteem, because this is going to be a super class of people that will have access to information that you and I won't have access to. And see, this is the whole goal. Like I was reading earlier, where this concept came out of Prussia, where they trained the 1%. Basically, so basically the children that go or have gone to this school whose parents come from that class, the average American, let alone Black families, can't afford $55,000 to $75,000 a year,
right,
to go to these schools. So you're automatically locked out. Okay, but this has been going on for what? Since 2014. That's 12 years. So they already have a huge head start.
Yeah.
Okay, on our children, who are going to have to find a way to compensate this based on, but the thing that our kids are very creative. They have this God-given ability where no matter what it is, because they're kinesthetic learners, so they don't need no instruction, they don't need any of that. They can actually look at something. That's why they can rap so good. It actually takes a certain type of cognitive ability to do that. Okay, so even the greatest white rapper, Eminem, had to grow up around Black people for this training to take place, right?
Right.
But these are things they don't want to acknowledge. But the whole issue behind this, and let's talk about this for a minute, because this was one of the reasons why I put up that first visual about the feudalism system and how this alpha learning is focusing on developing critical thinking. Now here's what you got to ask yourself. If AI is teaching them to be critical thinkers, then what will the other 94% be taught to do? This is a question we need to, because see, we fall into this category, whether we want to accept this or not, okay? That doesn't mean that you're beneath somebody or below somebody. That only means that there is a structural, systemic process or program in place to further keep you at a disadvantage socio-economically. That's what that means. So when I listen to the lady or the CEO of these schools, it was interesting on what she was saying, how she conceptualized this. She said that, well, first of all, that the school helped improve the students that went there, their ability to score in a 90 percentile on standardized tests. And that's a whole nother subject in itself. But the fact that our kids are going to be judged on these same standardized tests, now this puts them at a huge disadvantage. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So all of this is by design. And in this new system, so she was saying that, as we were saying earlier about how the Greek knowledge, which was stolen knowledge out of Kemet. What's the brother's name? That Steve Coakley, I believe,
Yes.
did a fascinating job. You know his son too, right, Lance?
Yes, I do.
Did a fascinating job with educating us on this. Okay, but Plato and Aristotle was the teaching structure that actually modern day academic education was based on. You know, sort of the philosophical model. And so the issue that comes into play here is is that these schools are K through 12. The entire curriculum is taught by AI. Okay. However, it's only a 2-hour instructional session as opposed to the standard 6-hour day. Now, my question is, what are these kids going to do with all this extra time? If they're only being educated by AI to deal with cognitive issues, then you're cutting out the other 90% of the existence of a human being. Okay. So what about the spiritual, psychological, and physical realm that we live in? That's like saying that water doesn't have 3 states when we know it does: solid, liquid, and gas.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't eliminate nature, just like you can't eliminate the human thought process or our emotions. And these are things that they will have an effect on the society going forward. Okay. Now, Lance, you can put that last picture up there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here's where we really get into, in my mind, the real issue. Now, here you have a robot, an artificial intelligence that is, there is no in between this robot and the person that they're educating. So automatically what that means is there is no human connection, or there is no symbiotic connection to the instructional aspect of what's happening, this one-on-one tutoring. But the 1% of these children that are being educated to be the new barons and nobles that's going to control all the wealth on the planet that the kings have, they're being purposely taught to be devoid of human emotion, because if you don't have any empathy or sympathy, like one of the people that they worship said, then you don't have to think about a person that you step over in the street, although your systems have helped cause that. Not all of it. And we know individuals are responsible for their own behavior for the most part.
Right.
But we're talking about breaking down all of the support systems in a society. So these individuals that are being taught by this robot, and again, you know, there are going to be people that's going to be one-sided in listening to this. I am not saying that this doesn't have an upside, okay? I'm simply pointing out the issue that we're going to have, particularly in the area of critical race theory, when you have a superclass that have access to information that you and I don't. Now let's look at, finally, let's look at the issues surrounding this model. Okay, the issues surrounding this model is there will be too many chiefs and not enough Indians, because inevitably, even though they're being instructed by AI, the information flows already out here on the internet. Okay, so the average person can access information that probably not in the same way that they are being taught, but you still are aware that that information exists. Now, whether or not you can do something with it is a whole nother question. So the other issue surrounding this is unlocking real human potential. Okay, so when that happens, okay, so when they get this advanced training of AI, what are they going to do with it? What is this? Are they going to oppress people like what's going on now? Are they going to create another imperialistic type of movement? This is a question we have to ask ourselves. The other thing is traditional education focuses on social adaptation skills, such as important social norms. But with alpha school training, too much focus on the source of academics rather than the natural balance. So again, one of the things that happens with academics as well, or in the academic world, or in that institution, is this pseudo status that it creates for people who are in these institutions at certain levels. So it automatically creates some type of inferiority, which they use very effectively to make you feel as if you have no, or you can't contribute anything to society. The other issue that is surrounding this, and again, these are just my thoughts, is AI as a liaison between human natural interactions. Are people going to begin to, well, I mean, that's been, you know, using, you know, your AI, or using your, I can't think of the word right now, but avatar. So that's something that's been out here. But again, we're talking about normal human everyday interaction when you're dealing with these systems and these institutions that are going to be ran by, like the young person we see here being trained in the future. Are they going to let AI do all the interaction, and they have no interaction with the people who are customers, clients, or, you know, just the society in general? Because now, no matter where you call any company, you're dealing with AI. But we know that there's some form of human intelligence behind this. So we have to ask our question: what is going to be the outcome of this elitist class that's being trained in these alpha schools? And more importantly, what will their mindset be? Is it to raise people up, or to continue to oppress people? And again, now that, well, you can't oppress, it's 40 million black people or more. It's more than that, but we'll just go with that.
Right.
You can't. So what are you going to do? What you're going to bully them into being what you want? Because what's going to happen is that class, the serf and peasant class, which is 94% of our population now, there's going to be some type of pecking order even amongst that class. Okay, so all of these things have to be dealt with when you look at where is the society going? What are, and so you need real leaders in order to accomplish this. Finally, measuring students on how fast they should complete work as opposed to them learning based on their natural abilities. So in other words, this system, I looked at a little bit, it's based on cognitive demands. So, they still use a lot of the traditional historic narratives, but with different modules. So, and this is something you see in special education, particularly back in the early days, is that children were judged based on whether or not they were able to keep up with the instructions that other children were able to, not knowing that the child who, just because they don't pick it up as fast as some of the other ones, actually probably is the one that's the deeper thinker. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That actually spends more time. And in our society, we've been taught to teach people that people are slow, if they take the time to, figure things out. Now, some things, you have to be fast about. Right. But we're saying overall, okay, brother, you're saying overall that as we move forward with critical race theory and AI and alpha schools, that it's going to take a certain type of innovation. We can't keep fighting over trivial things, okay? Because we're going to run it. We're already running into a situation where what are the generations under us? What are they going to be trained to do? And I think I'll end the show on that, brother.
Okay, brother. Very informative. My thing, just wanted to add in, is if they have a robot like that, an AI robot like that, where's the human connection? Where's the human connection?
Yeah, there is none.
Right. It'll be sterilized out. When you're learning something, when you're absorbing something, it's so much easier when you have a human being there and you can vibrate. I remember the good teachers that I've had, like I said, some humdingers of other types, but I still remember the connections that we had. Overall,
it's incredible you can remember their names.
Oh yeah, I'm a computer that way. I do not forget. I do not forget. I don't forget how people make me feel, what they look like. I was just speaking to a friend of mine I've known for almost 50 years, and I was telling him about this one teacher, Miss Chrisman, and it's an inside joke, but I remember, and it stayed with me. And there were other teachers that didn't like me, right? Mm-hmm. In high school, and I'll just throw this one out. There was one named Mr. Belfour. And in art school, we had to, in this particular assignment, we had to do a thumbnail drawing of the assignment to show the teacher where we were going with it. So the thumbnails didn't have to be perfect. It was just a sketch, and it's art school. So a lot of us put detail in it, but I went in. It looked like the finished product, but it was smaller. And he took it and he looked, he said, "This is unacceptable." I was in front of the class. And he said, "This is garbage," and he ripped it up and threw it in the garbage can.
Wow.
And
you know what that reminds me of? You remember that scene in Malcolm X where he said Malcolm you're never going to amount to anything. And he was
Exactly.
saying, but I want to be a lawyer. And his teacher was saying, no, you need to focus on being some type of laborer or something like that. And that actually is one of the main issues that I was trying to bring out today, is that you're attacking, and I'm glad you used the word vibe, because you're attacking divine laws. You're taking that away. There's no vibration, there's no frequency, there's no attraction. All of these things are very, very important to the human spirit and mind. So what is the consequence of having this super class of people that control all the distribution routes, all the wealth, all the fiat? They control everything. And more importantly, control the schools where our children are going to be educated. So what are they going to take away their natural vibration from them now?
That's what it is. That's
what it is. Because that's our real power.
Right. See, and when a child gets sick in school, or feels upset or has some type of problem with another student, how is a robot going to sit down and evaluate the emotions? You know, is there a PTA meeting with robots?
A robot therapist? Counselor?
How's a robot going to be a therapist with a child or just somebody in high school or anybody when you can't? What do you input emotions into and they can act like it, they can talk like it.
Right. I saw one the other day that act like they were having some type of feeling connection.
Right. And they're making these companions now. They're making male and female companions that you can talk to on the phone.
Yeah.
That you can freak off with. I'll leave it at that. And they act like, you know, they emulate. And we're teaching these things by how we react online. Because some platforms will say, would you allow your videos or your streams to teach AI?
Right.
So they can only go but so far, but they can only act that way. It's like a human being who is not in love with you, but they're feigning love because they want your money.
And that is deception. That is deception.
Yeah.
And it's going to cause a lot of issues because then that generation, they're going to learn how deception is going to be a built-in part of how they communicate with each other.
Because they lack the connection. So it's easy to fit in something else, you know? And therefore, it'll be easier to treat each other with less or no emotion.
Yes.
Because it's not coming from, because we had inside jokes with teachers. Some teachers were cool.
Yes.
I remember there was a teacher named Mr. Witz. And this was back in 1977. And he was a Vietnam vet, and he was a little cuckoo touched.
Okay.
And I put him down, but he got along with everybody, and he didn't like the establishment of how the school was run, and he would talk real with us. And also knew he was a weed head. You know what I mean?
Right.
he was off the chain, but he did some things, some exercises, not just out of the book, but we did a thing about trust.
Yes.
And we had to get behind a classmate, and they had to lay back and allow their weight to fall, straight up fall, not hold back. If you trust
that other person to catch you.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And then we had to go by the person we trusted the most to catch us and the person we to the least. And then he went through all of this stuff. So that was deep. A robot can't teach that.
No, it cannot.
You see what I mean?
Yeah. And you know, the consequences of the human element being taken away, when you think about how cults control people, one of the first things they do is they cut them off from all their family and friends.
Yes.
Okay. So when you think of the fact that the children are going to be cut off from all human emotion, that's going to have a devastating. So let's look at what happens when they get frustrated or angry. What, they're going to throw something at the robot? I mean, what are you gonna do? You can't. How they gonna learn how to de-escalate situations if the robot don't care? Okay, let's just call
Right.
it for what it is. The robot don't
Right.
care. Like you said, he can emulate that, but at the end of the day, they don't give a damn. And
Right.
so it's a situation where just like if you're in a relationship, like you were saying, and somebody don't love you. Like I was reading where this young NBA player recently got put off the Bulls team because he stood up against something that he believed in. So everybody's missing the point.
Right.
If you're telling people that they don't have the God-given or creator-given right to express how they feel, then you, in effect, are becoming a God to them. How are you going to tell some and then penalize? But the thing that hit me the most was his wife left him. I don't know if you heard about that issue, an NBA player, the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, I don't really follow it, but I heard of the situation.
Yeah. And so
There's a lot of that
it's
going on.
huh?
I'm just saying there's a lot of disconnect with the sports, and it's just people using people, and I would be very paranoid if I was some famous athlete that had a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
By anybody coming up at me,
Yeah.
But it's all relative though, because
Mm-hmm.
I was speaking to a friend of mine earlier about out here in Ghana, how transactional many relationships are.
Okay.
And I want to talk about it without insulting Ghanaians, but I'm seeing it clear that we were speaking about passport grannies. I don't want to just take it off anywhere else. Older women from America, mainly America, who come out here to get with a younger guy.
Okay.
Because they want to
I've heard
control
that.
them. Yeah, they kind of want to control them. They had bad relationships in America. They're like, okay, now they're retired. They have money. They built their house. So they need a guy in their life, but they get somebody they feel they can control because this guy has nothing. And they realize they're being played back, that it was just transactional. And in the conversation, we were saying how the men who really make money have their choice of the women. They can have a wife, they can have two mistresses, a side chick, and a girlfriend, but everybody falls in line. And that's what I have a problem with. Like, you just limit yourself to this category. What about emotion? What about real love? What about, it's just like transactional. And even out here, you don't see people embrace and hug, and I'm not saying sexual, but you don't see the hand holding. You don't see any of that. But behind closed doors, there's a lot of stuff going on. But that's a whole different topic. I'll probably just do a little freestyle tonight and put something up, But yeah, the things I'm seeing, man, in this world the way it is. I mean, I don't want to sound like an old guy who is thinking about, but the traditional ways were proper. Today it's like driving on the road with no lines, no double yellow lines, no markers, no nothing, no guardrails. You can
no boundaries.
Reduce your speed. You go around a turn on the cliff and fly off. Anything goes, and there's no parameters.
Yeah.
There's nothing to guide us.
Right.
You see what I mean? We're already losing connection. They want to put robots in schools. The economy is going to get worse, and parents are going to have to work more jobs and be disconnected from the kids. It's just wild, wild west now. It's going to happen.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and so we're in need of and these people are already out here, but the way that our system is structured, they want to keep certain people at that level, because when you have complex thinkers who actually have a soul and connects with humanity, then it counteracts that energy where they don't have to think about the consequences of what they do, just like when they voted no for reparations with the UN. The thing is as long as I can ignore something, okay, then, and that goes back to the central point of CRT. As long as I can ignore the truth, then I don't have any feelings towards it. But the minute I see all those children that I killed in a school, the minute I acknowledge that, then it shows who I really am. And with that, brother, I think I'll end the show.
Yes.
And
thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you, man. And you guys have a great week. Hold on to the belts, and I'll connect with you.
Of course, you know we're gonna do that.
I know. Yeah, about 5 title fights in 2 days.
There's one more coming tonight. I'm just gonna flow with the thoughts and just let it happen crazy. Right. Like a buck and bronco. They won't be able to hold on. They'll be like, man, where's this guy's mind going? I'm feeling that way right now.
I pity the fool.
I pity the fool who can't keep up.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
All right. Thank you so much, brother.
Yes, sir. Peace and love.
All right. Yes, peace. Yes, everybody. I'm gonna be back a little bit. I'm not gonna freeze. I'm not gonna do it live. I'm gonna do it recorded, but I'm gonna do it off the chain, and I want to put it up tonight. And I'm gonna be raw. It's gonna be a little adult. It's not gonna be lewd to be lewd, but I want to express some things. And you heard a little bit of what I started to say, but I want to go and really go down deep to the point where you think I'm losing my mind, but I'm not. Like I said, I'm hitting the old man phase, even though I still feel young, because Wednesday I turned 63 at 5:34 a.m. in the morning, East Coast time. So I'm looking forward to that. And everybody, I see you there, Chance Rogers, Landon Price, Sister Queen Diane, Sweet Berry. I acknowledge everybody. Pretty much I do believe, but let me go up the list here. And I'm going to take a 10-minute nap. Brother Boz, Hit Fitness. Yes, indeed. And I did say Landon Price, right? Okay. I was so zoned out. But yeah, I will be back. And it's what time now? 8:12 here. I want to put in like a good hour and get it up later on. We can just be nonstop. I just want to do not a different style, but a more intense style. So I will be talking to you in a little while, and I will be there on the show. If I record it and put it up, it's going to get down like that. All right. Much love to you all. I'll talk to you in a little while. On to the next one. Peace.
Hallelujah,